Good evening, everybody. Welcome to meeting number 6 of the Parks and Rec Task Force. Again, just for the sake of the audience at home, I am Mike Sable. I work for the city of Maplewood as the assistant city manager and the HR director. I am here as your guide and facilitator of the conversation. And so as to kind of you're used to I think the flow and the pattern of how things work. And so I'm going to go and I'll ask you to introduce yourself. I will share one thing that you have learned about yourself in the last quarantine. What have you learned about yourself in the last 2.5 weeks? And then we can get started with the meeting. And the order tonight is going to go Bill, Neil, and then Audra is who I have on my screen. So Bill, take it away, please.
I forgot the question, Mike. I can do the
Who are you? Why are you here? And what have you learned about yourself in the last 2 weeks?
Bill Knutson, Maplewood City Council. My job is to be a liaison and to answer questions and hopefully participate and learn a lot, and be ready for making the right decision. Let's see, in 2.5 weeks, I learned how to cut a turkey in half with a reciprocating knife. As our whole family split apart for COVID awareness concerns over Thanksgiving. I think everybody did that. Very weird, but we got to do the right thing. So
Gotcha.
We'll be fine. So
good. Thank you, Bill. Neil, then Audra, then Dorothy, please.
Hello, everyone. Neil Brenneman, Parks and Recreation Department. Over the past few weeks of quarantine, I've learned specifically how to draw Minecraft characters very well with my son. We're doing some writing books, and he's drawing and writing books, and he's been very precise on educating me on what they are and how to draw them. So
good. Thank you. Audra, then Dorothy, then Mike, please. You're muted.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
Parks and Recreation Manager. In the last 2.5 weeks, I have learned how to really connect with family through technology. And actually, my mother's birthday also happened right after Thanksgiving, and we got her one of those picture frames that you can manage with an app. And so we all put videos and pictures on her picture frame, and now she can do it herself. And there are updates every day. She's loving it. So it's been a kind of a cool way for the whole family to connect.
Good, thank you. Dorothy, then Mike, then Vicky, please.
I'm chair of the Park and Rec Commission in Maplewood. In the last 2 weeks, I learned that being on prednisone and having to take insulin makes me dizzy, and I fall on my face on the ground.
Oh no.
That was not a good weekend.
I'm sorry, Dorothy. Please take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Mike, then Vicky, then Nolan, please.
Hey, everybody. Mike Erickson. The last 2 weeks, too, with everybody, we Zoomed both families for Thanksgiving, and we're learning that at least that's a way for us to connect with them and see everybody's faces. But since I retired earlier this year, I continue to hone my culinary skills as the chief cook and bottle washer in our household. So my wife and the one daughter that's home and the other one, geez, Dad, I can't believe you know how to cook now. Well, I never really took the time before. So I always had city meetings. So it's fun. It's fun to learn.
Good, thank you. Vicky, then Nolan, then Bryce.
Hey everyone, my name is Vicky. I'm a Maplewood resident. In the last 2 weeks, I started learning how to knit because apparently I don't have any hobbies. So here I go. Wish me luck.
Good luck.
Wonderful. Audio sounds good, and good luck on the knitting. Nolan, then Bryce, then Beth, please.
Nolan Cornell, representing South St. Paul youth basketball. Last 2 weeks, I learned how easy it is to not leave the house for 2 weeks and not realize it. So, and not need anything outside the house.
Mm-hmm. Good. Bryce, then Beth, then Aaron, please.
Good evening, everyone. Bryce from the city of Little Canada. I have learned how not to tile a shower. So failed DIY attempt.
Good luck. You can always fix it, right? There's always a handy person to come redo it for you. Thank you. Beth, and then Aaron, then I've got somebody on the phone who I don't know who it is. So Beth, go ahead. Beth, I can't hear you. It's not connecting your.
There you go.
That sounded better. Nope.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go. Yep.
I don't know. My son uses my computer for school, so I don't know how it's set up.
Okay.
I'm Beth Watchard with NEU Soccer Club. We play soccer from ages 8 to 19. And what I've learned that my family eats all day long. I mean, I learned that like back in March, but literally nonstop eating around here. Dishes.
And how many dishes it creates, right, Beth?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I thought I loaded the dishwasher last night. I mean, I loaded it, but I forgot to turn it on. So you don't have a fork.
Well, your audio sounds good, and regardless of who uses the computers. Aaron, go ahead.
Hey everybody, Aaron from Maplewood here. I learned that if you have a really small house, you can actually set up a man cave outside. And do all your stuff in the yard, just bring all your stuff outside, and it's awesome. So check it out.
Good for you. I have somebody on the phone listening. If you want to introduce yourself, you can press *6 on your phone and join us, or if not, we can just try to share your audio if you can. The last four digits are 0733. If you're interested in joining the conversation, identify yourself. Otherwise, we will wish you the best.
That's one of my earlier attempts to get on, I think, Mike.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Dorothy. All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to share my screen briefly. We'll kind of go through what we're hoping to get through tonight. And can everybody see this?
Yes.
So this is our agenda for tonight. Good evening, everybody. We've just done introductions. We'll do a brief review of our last conversation regarding recommendations. Again, as we talked about, there's really 6 areas that we're talking about. The physical assets, this partnership prioritization, the business model, which I will continually refer to as the Neil chart, that youth programming, youth sports, adult programming, adult sports, and then virtual. Talk a little bit more about regional cooperatives, our financial pieces, which are both capital and operating dollars, and then the importance of values and philosophy. And as a reminder, we're thinking about this over 3 different time horizons. Short term, something we can do in the next 6 months. Medium term, thinking about 18 months, because as you know, that's really going to shape the 2022 budget. And then long term, what kind of a programming model do we want to offer long term? And then the next meeting topic agenda item is this council presentation. I'm going to offer a slight modification when we get to that. So not anything to worry about, but just I want to get in line with how the Nature Center Task Force is operating. So I'll share that when I get to it. Are there any questions about the agenda or what we want to talk about tonight? And I'll open it up to the group. You can wave, you can put it in the chat, you can raise your hand. Any reactions or reflections on agenda? I'm not seeing any. I'm not hearing any. I don't see any of the chat function. So I'm going to assume that people are good to go. What I will also then do is share the my screen. So some folks weren't on the call last week or last meeting, and so I'm going to share my screen again and kind of walk through what we talked about as a group last time. We talked about developing recommendations for this group. We talked about the importance of the physical asset, whether it was the building or whether it was the grounds. We really wanted to do it in 3 categories again. Really, the first part was evaluating existing properties and assets, whether it was a rink or a baseball field or the MCC, that we want to make sure that we're continuing to inspect them on an ongoing basis because they're really important. We want to make sure that we preserve them long term. There's also some practical things about measuring gym usage and fee structures of competing gyms and use rates for other areas. We really wanted to make sure that we preserved existing infrastructure at a high level, and then also finding ways to share this information with maps and with tools that can be shared. In the medium term, we talked about the importance of the master plan as a guide to decision making. Really understand the demographics of the community. And I wrote pickleball example because it's one of those sports that 10 years ago didn't exist. 5 years ago, a few people played it, and now it is one of the fastest growing activities that you can see. And so we have to understand the dynamics and the demographics of what's interesting and what people are doing. We talked about also using a survey of users broadly. Is there a way to get Twin City metro area data on trends of our use? And then really the last one was about recommending and identifying groups who are looking for space and providing access to their needs. How do we maybe potentially create a new business based on what people are looking for? And I'm going to stop there. That's a lot of recommendations that I just threw at you. I want to look to the group to say, how has your thinking about this changed? Or if you weren't there as part of our last conversation, what questions do you have? And so I'm going to open it up to whomever would like to ask a question or make a comment. Mike Erickson, go ahead.
Yeah, just a comment that I think it's solid. It's right on, and I think it's something that at least for the short term, for 6 months, something that we can get done, and we can get some data out of it. So I think it's rock solid.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't here last time, but I think it looks really great. I think it's great that we put in there that we're collecting data and getting feedback from the community. So great job, guys.
Yeah. Mike, this is Bill. I look at this and even this first section. I used to do a lot of work in strategic thinking because like strategic planning was a lot of detail. So strategic thinking tells an organization, where am I going? Where am I headed? Is it east or west or whatever? And then it starts to lay out what you can and can't do. What do you want to do and all that kind of stuff. So I think this whole plan, I'm looking at the first area, but the whole plan reminds me of a very good strategic thinking with a lot of nice detail and some action steps. So sorry I wasn't here, but this is great.
Before we continue on, I did want to make a comment. The city does a community survey of all residents. It's really a quality of life survey. What we try to talk about people's attitudes around quality of service, public safety, business climate, just people, how do they, you just basically, one of the questions is, it's as simple as, what do you like best about living in Maplewood? And people share their comments. And one of the sections in there that we asked the public about was parks programming and parks amenities. And we are getting the results of that survey. And I'm looking at Audra. I want to say it's the 13th.
Yeah, I think it was 15th is what I thought.
Yep, you're right. I'm sorry. As soon as I said it, because that's a Sunday, we're getting the results on the 15th. And that's going to help us with some of this data collection pieces. And so from a standpoint of where we are in the process, we think it's going to be helpful to have. I say that knowing that the 15th is not today. So you don't have this information at your hands. And we'll talk about that later. So remember December 15th is a date, but just know that we have some really good community information coming next within 8 days from now. So other comments or reflections on this initial part, for maybe folks who helped develop it, or
I'll just second that. I think it's very detailed, and it has a good plan and structure going forward. I agree with Bill that it's strategic in its design, and I think it's a really good start. Yeah, I think this group did a great job.
all right. Keep in mind that we want additions. So if there's something that we're missing or something that should be refined, please feel free to open those up. I'm going to share my screen to kind of go over the next piece. And so, as you know, this conversation around partnership has really been very important. It was identified early on. In terms of the short-term one, there was the review of our existing operating and joint power agreements with athletic associations. The thought was that we could potentially standardize our agreements with all of the associations, and I know associations are represented here. And is there a way that we can make this make sense for everybody? And so if there's kind of a go-to template that we can use. We also wanted to identify any joint powers agreements we have with the school districts. We have either with 622 or 623. We also wanted to talk about what we can offer and what we want from our partners. What are the things that we need as a community? So if we are going to enter into a partnership agreement, setting forth the conditions that we would want to have. We would also want to widely share the existing partners. When you have, and there's a lot of them, but when you have 15 and 20 and 30 partners, really understanding what they use and when and why and which fields. We also wanted to invite existing partners and do almost like a focus group conversation with their needs going forward. Is NEU soccer going to be doubling in size in the next 5 years, and we want to be ready to help them? Or, you just really want to understand what your customer is doing. Again, we said this earlier, but developing criteria for a strong partner. We talked more about using data and surveys to identify new opportunities, and just information sharing with what other cities do. So, we should be using Roseville's parks materials, and they should be using ours, and same with Little Canada and other peer cities. We also recommend maintaining existing relationships with the school districts. We know that they're busy right now, but what can we do to help them beyond this year? And then this was a conversation that came up late in the conversation, but what's the next big thing that we can be ahead of the curve? And I think the example folks used was Blaine identified 25 years ago that soccer was going to be a big thing. They made an investment in soccer and are now a regional and almost multi-state draw for that. And so is there something on the horizon that we could be first in to really position us to capture a market? And really, there's opportunities for targeted outreach to specific cultural communities. And I think that's an interesting one. It's really complicated to capture right away, but I think offers an opportunity. So for folks who weren't on the call, this is your opportunity to ask questions. And for folks who were on the call, this is the opportunity to answer. So I'm going to just stop there and look to see who has a question. Go ahead, Vicki.
Are we including the why elsewhere and not considering them as part of the partnerships category?
We are considering them in the partnership category. I'll add that as a section specific.
Okay.
Does anybody else want to respond to that question while I type for folks who are on the call?
And then also another question. So when we say the school districts, is that community ed or is that something, or are those separate things?
Audra?
It could be both. I mean, community ed is one facet of the school district, but in potentially helping with youth and adult sports would be more community ed, but with youth sports, it could potentially be with different schools and the different athletic offerings, so they can be different.
Okay.
And then
it doesn't look like we really identify that anywhere, I guess.
Yeah, and we should. I just pulled up a link that I just got from Community Ed. It's the new calendar. I'll make sure I get it over to you, Mike, so you can get it out to our task force, just so that we can all see kind of what now. I mean, they're offering tons of things. They're offering tons of activities, more in the what we would identify as youth programming, but it's a lot. So anyway, it's electronic document. Mike, I'll send it over to you right now if you want to send it out to the group.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Right.
I think one thing school districts could encompass community ed, but I agree with Vicki, we could separate them out or at least list community ed separately. Definitely can't hurt.
Okay.
And then one other thing, Mike, I thought of just looking at this, we did call out, who uses what fields and gyms. Do we want to somewhere in there put facilities? Because again, when Vicki brought up the YMCA, it could be the theater, it could be some of the fitness rooms, and that could be the Wakefield Community Building. So maybe just, I know we said what we can offer might cover it, but maybe we would just want to call it facilities.
I'm going to share my screen after you said that, and I'm going to, what I did is I added.
Oh, you did. Yep, you got it.
Who uses which gyms, facilities, fitness rooms, facilities, and why? And I do fields. And then from Vicki's point, evaluate YMCA partnership. We want to sit down directly with their leadership. I think that is a really key one. A lot of this stuff is going to be done on a Zoom call or across a table, sitting down and understanding. And then I added to the other point that Vicki made about existing relationships with school districts. I called out both youth programming and community ed specific in this existing relationship piece, just
Excellent.
so that we don't lose it. So that's the joy of having two screens. So other reflections or comments about partnerships? Bill, you're leaning in. I think that's, oh.
There it is. Okay.
There we go. Go ahead.
So when we talked about partnerships, that means there's an organization that wants something that someone else has. So I'm assuming this we is always Maplewood. So it's not a cooperative structure or anything with different communities. This is just Maplewood.
For now, we have another section called regional cooperatives.
Yeah. But okay.
Yeah. But I think right now, I think the we in this case is this task force and its members.
Okay. And when you say there's a partnership, are there documents, agreements, things like that go back and forth?
Yeah, there would be, that's ultimately where we would get to, is that there would be agreements that go back and forth spelling out what each partner is responsible for.
Okay. And how different is that aspiration versus today?
Neil, Audra, how would you answer that question about how does that differ from where we're at today?
I would think we have some existing partnerships, like we still do have our agreement with 623 for the Edgerton Community Gym, but even just reevaluating even that contract and others and just saying, are these still working? Like the one with Edgerton's been in place for 20 years, and maybe it's, to look at it again and see how it maybe could change or be different. And then just developing more of these kind of partnerships and expanding on them, because we're kind of limited in actual formal joint power agreements at this time. So that would be the big difference, I think.
Thank you. That was helpful.
And question, Audra, just again,
Yeah.
because I'm extremely familiar with Edgerton,
Yeah.
having coached there and work there. Is there a relationship with the school district in terms of the use of the ball fields there for both baseball and softball? Are those Edgerton's? Excuse me, are those 623s, or are those?
And I can let Neil speak some more about the field usage that works up, but I will say that's actually Edgerton Park, and even the playground, that's actually part of our park system.
That is ours. Okay.
We
All
let
right.
the school use it, and so we also want to pursue,
Oh,
that playground is reaching the end of its life, and about
Yep.
what maybe we could do with the
Yep.
school district to replace the playground, but that's actually part of the park.
Okay.
And the fields
Thanks
are
for the
too, but I don't-
clarification.
Neil, if you want to speak to the usage with the school.
Yeah, as far as the fields are concerned, that it would be. I mean, we just use, they're in our system, and we have not had requests from the school necessarily outside of
Okay.
school time for use. I'm sure they're out running around in them and stuff during school time.
Sure.
Otherwise, it's use of our programs and associations that rent them and stuff.
In the gym use, both there and in the South Leg down at Carver, same thing. Volleyball, basketball stuff. Yep. Okay.
I have a practical question for the association representatives here. How often or how frequently do you shop around for price and try to get a good deal on this? Right, I'll go first, and then Nolan can answer. I saw a thumbs up.
kind of
I
an answer
would,
expected.
Yep. Go
I'm
ahead.
shopping around for the best price.
Say that one more time.
If I don't get the deal, I'm not happy. I will go return that thing, even if it takes time to return it, just to go get the better deal.
And thank you, Nolan.
I think ours is a little more unique, is that we have a good partnership with the school district. And so we get the rates they generally provide are way less than what we'll ever get anywhere else. So we kind of stick to only using them.
Okay.
And that's kind of how it's been with our association and that more of a stay in the community kind of deal. This year, briefly, it was discussed about looking elsewhere, but we just knew immediately that financially, I don't think we would be able to pass on the cost and or upfront the cost for going outside the city for rental space.
Okay. And Aaron, how about you? When you're doing program development, how important is the asset from your standpoint in terms of a cost?
Well, particularly in the arts, because the margins are so razor thin, you definitely are looking at space on a pretty regular basis. And obviously it also depends on how far people are willing to travel to said location. So it's because it's a huge expense many times next to what you're paying for the cost of employees or instructors or teachers or something like that. Certainly you're constantly looking for it and constantly looking to renegotiate.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions or reactions to this piece around partnership? I've tried to add comments where it's appropriate. I think this is a nice opportunity for short-term and long-term work for us and for us as staff and for you as, we didn't tell you this, but we're going to continue to rely on your input and insight. So you can choose to opt out, but we're always going to keep calling because we appreciate how much you've done for us. So
Good.
I'm going to switch my screen again and go back to number 3, this service level business model. We recommend identifying who is the best able to deliver in each area of youth programs, youth sports, adult programs, adult sports. If you think about going back to the chart that Neil put together, if we're talking about youth programming, who's best able to deliver that and why? Who would we recommend be the lead in that spot? Who would be best at delivering adult sports and why? I think that's a really important question to tackle over the next 6 months. That will also drive the partnership. I mean, we might, as a group, decide, you know what, the YMCA is really great at youth sports at this age range, and that's their business, and they take it and run with it, and we support them. And associations are great in this age range, and we do our best to support you. There's an opportunity there to really define your business. I think the other one, we have to be mindful of COVID in this environment. This was an interesting one I hadn't thought about, is we still have to maintain our contacts with our end group of employees, our referees, our umpires, our scorekeepers. It's hard to recreate a system, so we don't want to lose these folks. We don't want to lose the Mike Ericksons of the world trying to find umpires, so we want to make sure that they're there. We talked about breaking out programming and picking the 2 or 3 things that are really that we should really focus on, rather than offering a lot of things to a lot of people. Be really narrow and picking 1 or 2 things. Again, look at what peer cities are doing and then fill the gaps if somebody delivers a better service than we can. And I know Oakdale baseball comes up as a conversation. Mm-hmm. This is an opportunity to convene our peer cities to see if we could divide up this work in a partnership way. We also talked about building out contingency plans for changes to the pandemic. We don't know when restrictions are going to be lifted and what they're going to look like, so be ready. And I know that we also talked about we should also plan for some pent-up demand. A lot of people are going to be looking forward to getting out. And so when we are able to open, there's going to be a big influx of potentially new customers. And the example was golf courses this year, again, huge increases. How do we capture this surge in demand and capture the momentum? And even potentially, we can even potentially charge more because there's going to be so much more demand. We could actually use this opportunity as a money maker for folks. So I'm going to stop there. For the folks who weren't in the call, do you have questions for clarity or observations? Go ahead, Vicki.
I almost wonder if those first 2 bullet points that we have in the medium time range feel more urgent than some of the other things that we have in the short term. Like I said, I'm just thinking out loud here, but is it more important for us to figure out our business plan versus dealing with all the COVID related stuff in the next 6 months, I guess?
Reactions, comments?
Go a little further, Vicki.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I mean, for my perspective anyways, it doesn't seem as important that we figure out what we want to do as part of our strategy, as much as helping, with people being stuck at home or wanting to get out as soon as it's going to get warm, like those types of issues seem more urgent to me in the next 6 months than us figuring out what our business strategy is, I guess.
And Vicki, I agree with you. And one thing is we already are even in the state of kind of flux and holding patterns. We have been consistently working on contingency plans for the pandemic, and they change as recommendations change and surges. So that's something we're already doing, but maybe in the medium term it would be continue to, or, but I agree with you. Those are things we've kind of been doing actually since March, and it's kind of been modified and changed around. So I see how that would look a little confusing, that it would be 18 months, but maybe it's continued to do it because we don't know when this pandemic's going to end, when things are really going to move forward. Maybe wording it a little differently.
Yeah, and to go along with that, I know that Audra, you and Neil are probably doing a million things, and you know, I look at everything we have in our short term, and there's a lot of things there, and maybe we need to go back and prioritize that a little bit too. Otherwise, I feel like it's just not feasible, I guess.
Flip some of those from the short term to the medium.
Maybe. And maybe just looking at the overall plan too, we have a lot of things in the short term sections and all of the categories, I guess.
I noted that observation as well, and Neil and Audra are going to be tasked with most of the work, so we do want to make sure that they can do it all. So their input will matter in terms of organizing this. So I appreciate that comment, and I'm sensitive to it as well. Other questions or reactions to this section? Dorothy, I see you. As soon as you hit unmute.
There, I got it.
There you go. Go ahead.
I'm thinking that perhaps we have overloaded the short term, because that's something that's a little bit more reasonable to try and envision. And medium and long term is so far out, and so who knows what's going to happen. That maybe that might be one of the reasons that we ended up with more things in that section. And we also did those first, and we got tired when we got to the other ones.
Yes, I think all of that is true, and a little bit of getting tired, but a little bit of where your mind is, because it's just easier to kind of deal with what's in front of you. So maybe we can edit on the back end and send a revised draft out about what would be a piece.
I think the report has to end with "to be continued."
Yeah.
That's not a final report, it's recommendations. Wait for the future, to be continued.
Yeah, I would agree. And there's a way that we can help make that, we can shape that continuation.
I also think too, there's like Mike, what you were saying as far as kind of prioritizing on the back end, is there's definitely there will be a priority level for a lot of these short-term goals, to where, you know, there may be quite a few short-term goals, but there's going to be heavy on a couple of them that need to get kind of squared away first before we can even get into some of the other short-term goals or medium-term goals. And, you know, part of that is a big part of that is the service level business modeling. I think this one is going to be one of the more important ones to kind of focus on, because what gets decided as far as looking through these and kind of prioritizing these is going to impact a lot of the offerings that the city does and how they offer, you know, programs and sports or recreation, which would kind of then funnel into, you know, getting the pent up demand or attacking the contingency plans for programming and things too, is figuring out how we want to do, or, you know, prioritizing how we deliver them. And then, like Vicki, you were saying, is there's a lot that there's some in the medium term that probably could be short-term goals, but I think we need to figure out some of those short-term goals first before we can kind of jump into those ones, if that makes sense.
Other comments or reflections or reactions to that piece? All right, I'm gonna share my screen. This is for the next segment around regional cooperatives. We recommend creating a regional information sharing system across city boundaries. Finding out which communities are currently practicing and what areas they're open to conversation with other ways of working. Medium term, joint publication and information with peer cities. We threw out Little Canada, Roseville, the DNR, the Watershed, North St. Paul, etc. How do you bring all that information into one sort of space? The recommendations here, there's not very many of them, but they're all important. Would appreciate reactions or reflections to the kind of this segment, what people are thinking. or want to offer up?
It looks like, Mike, to me, it lays the groundwork for anything you might want to consider in the future. So it really just starts a whole, like an affinity group. You know, you're sharing, you know, all the information that's available. People can make choices, and like you said earlier, you know, where are the best programs? Where are the best fields?
Mhm.
You know, where is you know, all that kind of stuff is, you know, it's egalitarian. It's good.
Yeah.
One thing I thought of, Mike, was with this, Aaron, I agree with what Bill just said. But maybe for long term, if we wanted to put something, it would be, you know, that way we can pull together recommendations based on, you know, once we've created those groups and we share the information and that kind of thing, we'll be able to have some solid recommendations in the long term. I don't know if that fits in medium or long, because long term, it really all depends how those short term goals come together. But
Is there a way that you would say it in the medium or long term that I can?
it might actually fit better in the medium because it would tie to the one we were just working on before about, let me scroll my screen in here, under the service level. So it would, great recommendations in creating our service levels business model, something like that, where having that regional input is going to definitely contribute to that. Is the right way to say it?
And it could change in priority depending upon, you know, how deep those partnerships that we talked
Right.
about earlier. I mean,
Yeah.
you could change the patterns pretty quickly.
One of the questions that I have, and I don't know the answer to this, is this something that you think should be done at the staff level, you know, between Audra and her counterparts in these other cities, when, you know, Audra and Bryce kind of go together and go knock on doors and get their friends to sign up and say, hey, we need all this to do this together? Or does it require Bill and the city council and the mayors at that level? Where do you think the partnership could start or should start?
Well, certainly you've got to have the city council bought into this whole thing so that from one city to the next, so staff isn't off doing something on their own. So however that's presented, and if it's through this document from the task force, hey, here's what we're going to be looking at, and you know, Audra and her colleagues. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, what typically would happen is the staff will do all the generation of work and they'll call us to, you know, to make the call, make the message, whatever. And it works really well. You know,
good.
We love to serve the staff.
Okay. Bryce and Audra, do you guys want to talk about kind of your network that you have, either East Metro or statewide? How do you connect with each other?
So there's a few things, but this is something that I've kind of wanted to implement for a while. And the problem is some sort of this information sharing. You know, it's going to cost money. Whether it's a software, there's some free things like Facebook. We could start a Facebook group. The problem with that is it's not very easy to share files and things get lost. You know, things could be a lot easier if we had a area to go and, you know, we're talking about pricing for facilities. If we get all the metro areas to put in their pricing, I could just go on that and I could say, okay, this makes sense for how Little Canada is going to charge. You know, for field usage, it doesn't make sense for Little Canada to charge more than Maplewood and vice versa. We should really be charging the same for our associations. All we're going to do is hurt, you know, and I think it was said by Nolan, is they're just passing the costs on to the user. So if we charge more, the kids are going to pay more. And so that doesn't make sense, but we do need to be covering our costs. So I don't know where the appropriate platform is. You know, there's some paid models called like Basecamp and stuff where you can file share very easily, but then who pays for it? Does all the cities do some sort of, fee, and who manages it? And, it's going to take some time to set up, and, I'm sure Audra's got her plate full, but now, is it appropriate for Maplewood to say, hey, you're the person that needs to set this up for the whole North Metro, or whatever, whatever the boundaries are. And we also have the MRPA, and that's a really good resource. But from what I've seen, I haven't seen an online database to share files.
You acronym. I'm sorry. Hang on, Bryce. You gave me an acronym. I don't know what was that acronym.
Go ahead. Tell them what it is, Bryce. MRPA.
So it's the MRPA, the Minnesota Recreation and Park Association. And so that's a professional organization, and I'm sure both Audra and Neil are members. And it's a really good resource. It's a little clunky. A lot of times they'll do like listservs where they just send out a mass email where this might take a little bit of research, but I think there's some other listservs where you can just ask a question on some sort of form, and cities can respond. I'm not too familiar with what that is, but MRPA is just a little clunky. I'm not saying it's a bad service at all. It's just, it's a little hard to get information back.
Yeah, one of the things they did when all this pandemic started, it wasn't a fancy list, but they did create a shared spreadsheet. It really was just an Excel spreadsheet, kind of all labeled, just so every city could, and they had calls weekly that we could listen in on and see what other cities were doing, and then you could fill it in as you went, and that was really helpful. But I agree, Bryce, it's not as efficient as it probably could be, but just that was a great way to share, hey, have you closed your playgrounds? What are you doing with basketball courts? What are you doing here? And then we could all share, and every city listed what they were doing. Are you doing the 4th of July? Nope, we're not. We canceled our events. We're closed till this time. So, and that through MRPA there, the context, I think there's a database of people who could potentially be interested in doing this, and that would probably be a good place to start.
And to kind of follow up on that, same concept in the athletic management group I'm in through MRPA. Over the last maybe year and a half, there was the last, I guess, lead or whatever, the president of the group put together a big Google Doc, the same kind of thing that I was just talking about, but it was program specific, facility specific. So everybody would put in there. I mean, it was pretty comprehensive as far as adult sports, youth sports, fees, who you're using, rental stuff if you require certain things too. So there's definitely a hunger for that information to be centralized, or people that want to do it. It is a lot of work, and it's a lot of follow-up and continual updating, because it's easy to do it right off the bat when someone sits down for a couple hours and punches it all in. But as things change, that's a tough thing too. So yeah, it's a matter of trying to find that. I don't think there's necessarily a lot of wall between people that in the Parks and Recreation field, because I think people are very willing and happy to share information and kind of ideas. It's just a matter of, like Bryce said too, is kind of maybe centralizing it somehow and continually having updated. That's going to be a big piece too, and kind of depending on narrowing it down to what it really would want to incorporate.
So I'm thinking, as we're saying this out loud, Neil, those are good points. Maybe a big part of it would be identifying which communities, like the MRPA is the whole state, but if we're looking at having a regional area here that with communities that would work directly with us, and this short term, maybe identifying who these regional partners, regional communities would be, trying to figure out what would be the best fit would be a short-term goal, and maybe actually creating that database and getting it up and running might be, I don't know that would be in the short term, just with everybody still remote working and the chaos of COVID. Maybe that could be more of a, maybe not 18 months out, but maybe 12 months in the next 12 months.
So I tried to capture some of this information in real time. So I wrote in the short term that we would evaluate information sharing platforms for how cities can share. Is it Basecamp? Is it MRPA listserv as a model? Identify which communities we want to be regional partners and create databases to begin. We could identify Athletic Management Association information, use some of that Google Doc information. The other thing I made a reference to is Ramsey County has a League of Local Governments.
Good
Is
idea.
that something that they could be tasked with doing taking advantage? That's more medium and longer term, but that could be a home for some of this information. So I appreciate that. I also want to go back just very briefly to Vicky's point about service level and business model. I moved up the COVID contingency plans and things in the short term. And then in the medium term, I did put in there continue to modify COVID plans medium term. So I think you're right. If we're not solving for COVID in the next 6 months, we probably have a problem. So I appreciated that kind of comment. I'm going to stop sharing. I think that regional cooperative piece will require a lot of effort. And I think the payoff is potentially huge. Imagine if you could have standard pricing across 2 million people, 3 million population. You'd have a really easy, simple way to get the business working, and cost certainty for our associations would be helpful because you would know what it costs. And so
I do have a question about that regional cooperative section though. I guess I don't see anything on there that talks about how that would even happen. Like, are we assuming these other cities are just gonna be interested? I guess I don't see any place where we sort of talk about how that would happen, or I guess we just assume everyone wants to share information, I guess it seems like, or
it's a good question. I think many places, and this is like we're all kind of living a year from now or 2 years from now. We know that there's going to be financial constraints put on cities, and the economic crisis for cities won't happen this year. It'll happen in 21 and 2022. Because we operate on property taxes, and our property tax collection is always 18 months behind kind of where the economy is. So cities haven't been impacted as harshly as the Maplewood Mall has, or strip centers have, or all of these some of these businesses that are really restaurants. It's when they go bankrupt or when they stop paying their payments, the city's hit will be a year from now or 2 years from now. And so we are assuming everybody's going to be in the same boat in Roseville and Little Canada and Woodbury and all of our neighbors. And so a little bit of us is trying to get ahead of where we think the world's going to be, but we don't know for sure. But that's an excellent question. And Audra?
Yeah, I was going to say, could you pull your edited sheet back up? Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
My short-term memory is just with thinking about where to place things, because the short term jumps from 6 to 18, and just wondering if we want to put 6 to 12 months, or maybe for that first one, because it sounds great, but it will take a lot of groundwork and getting through things, or explore creating instead of recommend just creating one, because the way it reads, it's like we're going to create one of these sharing systems in the next 6 months. So not that we couldn't, maybe we can, but maybe explore creating a regional system, and then make sure in the 6-month term to reach out and really make that exploration, do the work to see how it would work out and who we would partner with and what they're looking for and that kind of thing. Just some thoughts.
So I added the 6 to 12 months, and then I did recommend explore creating regional sharing systems. And then really we are going to have to ask if they're interested or not. Go ahead.
We talked at the Nature Center Taskforce meeting about, what is a good partner, and maybe it's on here too, but just looking for what we could offer partners and what they can offer us, like trying to create that good fit so it's mutually beneficial, because someone's not going to be our partner just because we want them to do something, but we have to identify what we would have to offer and vice versa. So that would take a little time and effort, but it'd be a valuable step toward creating that that regional connection.
Yep.
So however we worded it with the Nature Center, and I think we worded it really well there, maybe we could add that.
Okay.
In fact, as an FYI, we reached out to the Friends of the Nature Center, and we had a Zoom meeting. Another representative from our Maplewood Historical Society and I, Bob Jensen, who you know, Audra, of course. But anyway, because I had never met those people. I didn't know they existed. So anyway, it was a very productive and informational meeting for us on the farm to understand their operation and for them to better understand ours.
Yeah.
Other comments, questions, reflections? All right, I'm going to share my screen again. Talking about financial investments, fundings, and sponsorships. We recommend using the YMCA financial position long-term, or understanding the Y's position long-term, really do a deep dive in their business model and invite them in to discuss. They're a key partner in our space, and so really understanding what they need to do to financially survive and thrive is really important. We talked about potentially offering a higher level of service and evaluating our pricing. Could we actually charge more? Maybe adult basketball is going to be such a big draw that we could charge any price and then, offer up a higher level of service. Do we want to communicate changes to parks budget to the community and how to get it back to pre-COVID levels? Do we want to advocate for more funding for parks and rec money in budgets? Continue to fund and maintain the level of services, understanding the public voice and the value of parks and programming.
Say, Mike, excuse me, could you go back to one only because I want to get a clarification. The second bullet, if we draw a comparison to, and we talked about this a couple meetings back, about how Park and Rec is designed for the entry level, the rookies, as it were, the ones that aren't as good. And then eventually you go over to traveling or club ball. Could we be in competition with them, i.e. maybe an in between? And I say that as is that what we're talking about here?
In terms of the charging more or?
Yep. Yeah, charging more. Yep.
I think the example was more focused on adults because there's going to be this pent up demand to get out and do some joint exercises. But it really came down to what do we want to offer and what do we want to charge. And so we have the opportunity to get some more revenue from that standpoint. So.
Okay. Just getting a clarification. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe the other thing you could think about is if we do really great amenities for tournaments, and we became the place to have basketball tournaments.
Soccer tournaments with Beth. Yeah.
Yep.
Guess what? Yep. There's money in that. Yep.
Right. There could be, as long as the value is there, right? If you get high touch service and you get your fields lined between every game and all of those little things, they might go a long way. We also talked about inventory of sponsorships and grants. There's a lot of groups out there might be willing to fund certain things. And then also kind of capturing the donated time. A lot of people give their time and talent. How do we get an economic value to that? Again, medium term, identifying sources of money, joint marketing for special events. And then how do you use community gathering opportunities as a launching point to resell and to sell your thing? So if you're at 4th of July, do we have flyers and handouts and things to do program marketing? And then At the end, we talked about would we could recommend considering a referendum on parks and open space as a way to fund this long term. And so I will ask if there's questions from the group who wasn't here or things people want to expand on.
And for everyone who wasn't here, that last one there, I'll just share the history of the open space in Maplewood. So Maplewood back in '94 was the first city in the state, 853 cities, to go to the voters, directly to the voters for $5 million for open space. I was not here at that time. I would come here later and be involved in the purchase of some parcels of land. But the reality is they put it out to the voters. Do you want to preserve some open space land? And it was successful, the first ever. So we had $5 million to go out there. You know, should that be applied here? Let's go out to the voters, go directly to them and say, hey, you know, we need $600,000 to run Park and Rec for the year. Are you up for it? Or like the school district does, they come to us for different types of levies, same sort of concept. And let's put it out there. There's nothing wrong with that, because if us residents here in Maplewood are going to want Park and Rec, well, we're going to end up paying for it, and that's okay.
Other questions? Comments? Not seeing any, so I'm going to scroll down. Go ahead, Beth. You're still muted, unfortunately. There.
Okay, I'm still here, kind of. I switched my screen, so I'm trying to find the pictures of all you guys, but I can't. So I was just gonna say, you know, I just want to reiterate. I've said it before that I think when the city and the surrounding cities thrive, you know, schools thrive. Everything is so much better when kids and families and adults in the city thrive. So it's not just an open space, you know, it's when people come together, have fun together, see nature, be active, think great things happen, you know, school systems thrive. And when school systems thrive, you know, there's not really problems with people paying their taxes because everyone's thriving, you know. So I just think that, you know, Parks and Rec is just a gateway to great things. So
I like that.
I think we need to, you know, make this so important. It's not just a park, it's a community. It's people's living a great life. So
Beth, you made me just think of something that maybe we can add somewhere to our document is, you know, I think people who live in Maplewood, we use the trails, we use the parks, we use all these things that the Parks and Recs provides for us. And sometimes I think maybe people don't recognize that that all is there because some people are working to make that happen for us. And so I wonder if there's a place for us to work on PR or something, or some sort of advocacy to sort of promote these ideas, everything you just said, Beth, to people who don't think about things like that. And that helps with, you know, getting sponsorships, getting, you know, tax money to pay for things like that, because not everyone is going to have that same perspective, and they might not recognize that all that stuff is there because somebody's paying for it, somebody's working to make it happen, somebody's cutting the grass, you know, and all those things that come with running Parks and Recs, right?
mm-hmm.
Vicki, you're spot on with this, and it's really a question for Bill and Mike. Where do we go from here? Once we finish this up, we have an outstanding, we all got our city newsletter today, and it was short and sweet, just a 4-pager, but it was very well done. Year in review by our city manager, Melinda Coleman, kind of what the city's done throughout the past 9 months. And it was very well done. And I say that as an example because we've got certainly a Facebook medium, and we've got the city's website. But yes, we got to tell our message. And for for Dorothy, for you and the Park and Rec Commission, absolutely. We got to tell our story because other cities are running into the same thing. And how are we going to come out of this thing? So anyway, for those of you who haven't seen your newsletter yet, grab it. And again, very good piece because Joe's going to do some interviews for history purposes. And if there's an opportunity, volunteer to get interviewed by Joe Sharon.
Thank you for that. Bill, go ahead.
Oh, I'm up. Yeah, when I looked at this, I'm sorry I missed the meeting last time. When I looked at this, I was putting little dollar signs in my column, looking at and I thought, that's pretty crass. Then I listened to Beth, and I'm thinking, wow, wait a minute here. So there's a chicken and egg a little bit going on here. Yeah, we got into a situation where we needed to kind of fix things. Yet at the same time, we've just spent weeks restoring our faith in this great investment in our community. And I think Beth said it really well. And I think Mike put us on the spot, which I appreciate. There's one thing in here, it says restore to original levels. That's kind of interesting. And maybe that can happen. But, I think our job now is look at our baseline. Like Mike said, that newsletters and everything else suggests that really Maplewood does a lot of things right. And this just describes a whole list of things that we can be better. And at the same time, we need to maintain this quality that we have in this community. So there's a non-answer, but I get it. You've been very impressive in your, thank you.
All right, I'm going to share my screen because I added what Vicki had said. So I put it up in the service levels business model. Make advocacy a higher priority for our message. It's not just a park, it's a community. We are making our community thrive through our efforts. And I think I tried to capture a couple things that Beth said. So, yeah. This is all part of a quality of life.
Yep.
And some communities do say they identify quality of life as low taxes. Some say it's really high service. Some say it's, business, and, everybody gets to define it. And so really this is defining what's important. And so now we get down to, this is actually sort of the perfect segue, the values and philosophy. We recommend identifying, aligning our values with potential partners. What do they do well and what do we want? And what do they want and what do they need, right? So how do you align both of these things? Documenting and sharing our city's values with others, talking about why recreation matters, understanding more that the public sees the value of Park and Rec via survey. So this survey data is going to be helpful here.
That comes out in a week, okay?
On a week. Okay. Yep. We live where we live because of parks and closeness to cities. This is again around quality of life. When people are healthy and active and outside, so they thrive, and people can respect part of their taxes going to Park and Rec. We want to include the Park and Rec Commission to share their work of the past few years. Dorothy and her team have done a lot with Audra driving that conversation. Aligning public safety to our work. There's interesting research that kids who are active in sports are not active in negative activities, right? This is a positive outlet for kids. We talked about using the police department has a multicultural advisory committee. This is where they get input from residents, non-traditional residents, right? Black, Indigenous, people of color who have different ways of engaging in their community, that we can now reach diverse and underserved populations by doing direct outreach to other groups. And then, right, the YMCA leads with their values, and how can we use their values and approach to help ours to strengthen community? I think this was an interesting conversation. We talked about being flexible if perceptions and attitudes change, and then using the master plan values as a guide. I will open it up to the group for questions or comments on this section.
Good stuff.
I think I commented before, do we want our values and things to be first on the list rather than last? Or in our different categories?
I will put it up to the group. What do you think? About moving values higher up in the,
What, moving, flip the two, first and second bullets around?
no, she's talking about making, instead of it being labeled number 6, that it be labeled number 1.
Oh, yeah, I agree, Dorothy. That's big picture thinking. Yeah, let's put it where it needs to be. Yeah, absolutely. Not that physical assets aren't important, because they are. But as Audra told us last time, they're already making sure that our facilities are being maintained. Yeah, put it out there. That's good for Park and Rec, good for the city council, good for all of us. You bet.
One thing we could do if that does happen is, again, we don't have to put both the mission and the vision statement, but we did spend a little bit of time at the last meeting, for those of you who were here, on what the vision statement for the Parks and Recreation Department is. And it's to help create a vibrant community that embraces diversity, celebrates arts and culture, values health and wellness, and promotes stewardship of the environment. And then we have guiding principles that go with that, and maybe adding those to this area might be helpful. But our guiding principles are having safe and welcoming parks.
hey, Audra, I think you're blocking the microphone.
Keep leaning in.
With the paper.
Gotcha. And then we have our guiding principles, which are safe and welcoming parks, connecting people and places, encouraging health and wellness, and promoting environmental stewardship. And those are the guiding principles for the whole master plan. So maybe including those in this area when we do report to council would be a good fit.
Absolutely. Good stuff.
I agree.
You guys already did the work. Yeah. Put it out there.
I'm looking to the group. Is there any objection to moving that section? No. Nodding, shaking. Okay, we'll do that. Okay. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was just, who wrote that bullet on, we definitely live where we live because of parks and close in cities. Really well done. So I just,
I think it was a combination of Beth and Bao were sort of both talking at the same time, and I tried to write it as fast as I could, if I remember correctly.
That's what I would have chosen, but no, it's great.
Yeah, good. Okay.
It's an effective lobbying message. Thank you.
All right.
That's so true.
Well, it happens to be true. So.
As re-elected Bill, Councilmember Bill is got some material.
Well, I just, we split so much on this because we're trying to figure out, how to, enhance the economics of it. But there's so many fundamental things that are important to our community. So we got to balance between, what absolutely we should do as a vibrant community and what are the extras that we can do. And, it's kind of like the locusts. I mean, is this a place that Little Canada would like to partner with and, enjoy living in Little Canada because I'm next to Maplewood? What's wrong with that? Not a thing, so.
So if there's not any more additions to that piece, we'll hold the recommendations. Well, I'll go through and I'll make sure that they're all the mistakes in the grammar and the spacing and those kinds of things are fixed. But I'll work on that and send that back out to the group. I do have a practical challenge. The city council meets 2 meetings per month, and the next meeting is Monday. And so and the Nature Center Task Force wants to meet one more time to look at the community data to help their recommendations. So they want to wait. They don't want to go on Monday. They want to wait. And that group, I'm fine because I'm I'm staff. I do what the group wants to do. I just keep you on time from 5 to 7. So the question for this group is do you want to look at the community survey data when it comes to see if it changes your recommendations?
Yes.
Beth is nodding. Dorothy said yes. Vicky said yes. Aaron's saying yes. Bryce gave me a thumbs up. Okay, so
Might as well.
we're not going to present to the city council on Monday. Now I have problem number 2. The first meeting of the year is always organizational. They pick the mayor pro tem, they pick the newspaper of record, they pick the bank. It's more of a pomp and circumstance kind of a day. No offense, Bill.
No, you tell me. Yeah, okay.
It's an organizational meeting. It's going to be, right, we're going to set the calendar for the year. We're going to do some kind of the basics. So that means the next available meeting is January 25th to present to the city council. There's really no other good alternative. If you don't go on Monday, you have to wait until the 25th. My question is, do you want to set up a meeting in advance of the 25th? Real short, maybe 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, just to kind of go over one more time and refresh your mind, because you're going to have holidays, you're going to have New Year's, you're going to have kind of life in between then, and you may forget what you talked about. So is there an objection to setting up a meeting on maybe the 19th or the 12th or the 19th of January? It's a Tuesday. We can follow the same kind of pattern. Do people have a preference for which one?
Well, first off, thanks for sharing and giving us some options.
Yeah.
Because we're going to want to have a chance to see the revision. More important, we're going to want to have a chance to see and digest the survey information and see if, you know, there does need to be some change. So if you would need time to make any change to this, probably the 12th is better than the 19th. You know, a month from now.
Yeah, I would agree.
Would you share the survey results with us prior to that meeting so we could sort of?
Yeah.
Yeah. The minute we get them, you'll get them, because there's a lot of groups that are looking for it. So yes, absolutely.
So Mike, do you think, does anybody mind if I give a little update at the council on Monday just to keep them fresh? And
no,
maybe,
you're the liaison, Bill.
Well, but the thing is I'm bothered by the fact that the Nature Center got to present already, and I want to make sure in direct competition. No, I'm kidding. It was very nice to hear, the progress from Kathy Juneman, and I would just, with Mike give me some cliff notes, and I just want to express, this great work, and just make sure everybody is attention to the fact that, we are working vigorously to get this done, and unfortunately we got to wait till later, but just to give them a tune-up.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Can I ask a question really quick, Mike?
Of course, Vicky, go ahead.
Why are we presenting to the city council? Is it for approval, or I guess I might have missed that conversation.
They asked, so they created the group and they just want to know what you came up with.
Okay. Got
it. It's more for, it's a chance to talk to the community too, through the city council.
Yep.
And Mike, will that take place in a virtual Zoom meeting then too?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Chances are good.
Chances are good. Right now, the council meets virtually.
Yeah.
But
the decision made until we change, it's all virtual.
Yep.
Yeah.
Something like that. So
I've learned not to speculate. I'm sorry, Dorothy, go ahead.
Who does the presentation?
Are you looking at my notes? Because that's the next question I was going to ask.
Oh.
Dorothy volunteered.
Dorothy's not volunteering.
We'd love you to volunteer. So we do need someone from this group to present. It can be one, it can be two, it can be three, it can be everybody. I'm indifferent to how you want to do it, but someone who can kind of talk through what you talked about, what you wrestled with, what you're recommending, why are you recommending it that way? Realistically, it's probably a 20-minute conversation with the city council. I'll give you a frame of reference. The Nature Center Task Force has identified 2 or 3 people that will share in the presentation.
I can tell you it's very effective when you do it that way.
Yeah. You don't have to volunteer today. You don't have to volunteer anybody else in their absence because we're missing a couple of folks. But if you are interested or willing to do it, I would encourage you to email me and say, I'll do it. It would be nice to have a mix of the whole group. Maybe it's somebody from an association. Maybe it's I don't know how it's going to work, but.
And Mike will prepare all your slides. So
There you go. It's all about the PowerPoint slide.
it's all about
That's the key.
absolutely. I had to do this for the EMS commission. That's how I got re-engaged with Maplewood, and it was incredibly fun and very, very powerful.
No, I would encourage you to do it. I would encourage you to step up and say, I'm willing to do it. The work has been good. The recommendations are good. There's good stuff that happens for sure. So, and I'll help you the whole time.
And
Dorothy.
our communications department can help with pictures and make it look really good.
Yeah.
Dorothy, go ahead.
I'll consider doing the first part on the values and the mission statement from Park and Rec, sort of establishing why we did all the rest of the work. But
Excellent.
I don't want to get into the associations and the gyms and all of that stuff.
Okay.
And I'll just tell you right now, Mike, if there's an opportunity, I'd love to. This is something that I have a passion for. In 31 years in city government, I need to give back to the community in one way, shape, or form. And would love to.
Well, we're not going to stare at each other any longer. We have 6 weeks to pick somebody to do it. So I will reach out. I appreciate you volunteering. It really means a lot. Audra, I'm looking at you. Is there anything that I missed or that we should have talked about broadly?
No, I don't think so. I think if I heard correctly, we want to maybe go back through these bullet points, and if we have to shift things around a little, we'll work behind the scenes and then get it back out to the group so they can take a look and make sure it seems copacetic. And then once the survey results come, like Mike said, send them out to everyone so you can take a look at that, and then we can regroup on. Did we decide, was it the 12th was the date, or was it the 11th of January?
I had the 12th written down because it's a Tuesday.
Yep.
It would be consistent with our timeframes. Bill, you are the city council liaison. Do you have any final words?
No, I am just extraordinarily impressed, and I've learned so much in this. I mean, that's a big part of it. And and the COVID has kind of been a disaster, but I don't think we want to present as if we're a disaster. We are, I think what Dorothy said, to get that vision and mission statements and really articulate it first, all what we've done, what a great value it is, and then what are we going to do to preserve and enhance it? So, I mean, so much of this is forward looking. There's nothing looking back and making apologies or anything like that. This is all saying we put a good base in the ground. We got great staff, good volunteers, everybody, and it's time for us to, just to enhance it. So, anyhow, that's all I can say.
If there's nothing else, I just maybe will say to the group, thank you so much for devoting almost 12 hours, right? When you think about when we started, it's been 12 hours of time and energy and talent into putting something that's going to reshape the community. So I appreciate the work that you have put into this. Over the next couple of weeks, please be safe, you and your families. I wish you nothing but good health and good happiness over the holiday season. However you celebrate, whether it's on Zoom or from the driveway or from the street, or just thank you and be safe, and best wishes for you and your family over the holiday season. I've got some tasks that I will work with Neil and Audra on, but other than that, I think we can call it adjourned. Thank you, everybody, so much.
Great job, Mike.
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas,
Great
everybody.
job, Mike.
Bye.
Audra, Neil, great. Thank you.
But
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.